That might be a little too high. Okay. Whenever you're ready.
Good morning. Welcome to all of you who are here in the sanctuary this morning, and all of you who are joining us online. I'm Helen Foss, and I have the pleasure of welcoming you as today's worship associate. Welcome to First Unitarian Church of Wilmington, Delaware. We welcome you no matter the hue of your skin or the origin of your ethnicity. No matter where you are on your path for spiritual growth, no matter who you love, you are welcome here. If you're new to First Unitarian, I invite you to check out our website, firstuuwilm.org, to learn more about us and to sign up for our newsletter that will come to you in your inbox every Friday morning. A quick reminder now, don't forget, our annual meeting is following the service today, beginning at 12 noon. Meanwhile, I'm quite intrigued by Reverend Larry's topic this morning. He says, "You are the story you tell yourself, so tell yourself a good story." So I find it funny when the first thing that pops into my head when I hear something like that ends up having real meaning. So here's the first thing that popped in my head. I never considered myself to be a writer. And here I am, at this stage in my life, writing the lead front page article in the Cokesbury Courier, our resident publication. So I've written like 30 plus getting to know you pieces over the past 3 years. And residents keep telling me how much they love what I write. Me, a writer? But then I stopped to really think about it and realized I never saw myself as an editor. And I don't edit easily. I find that really hard. So all these years, I cut off my writing potential with an assumption I couldn't write all that well. So what might I have been writing all that time? What might I been missing? Well, that's sobering. How many other stories might I have been telling myself? I'm all ears this morning, Reverend Larry. Now, let us prepare our hearts and minds for worship.
Good morning. I'm the Reverend Larry Piers, minister here at First Unitarian Church of Wilmington, but you already knew that. This morning, I wonder if you could just do an ever so gentle fist bump with the person sitting next to you and tell them your name. And Helen and I are going to demonstrate. Helen, I'm Larry. So welcome to each other. Do you notice how fist bump and saying your name can turn into a whole conversation? That's great, because this is a day for conversations, including our conversation in our annual meeting, but also it's a day in which we're going to celebrate the bridging of two of our youth as well. So it's an exciting day. Our call to worship comes from these familiar words. Look to this day, for it is life, the very life of life. In its brief course lie all the verities and realities of your existence. the bliss of growth, the glory of action, the splendor of beauty. For yesterday is already a dream, and tomorrow is only a vision, but today, well lived, makes every yesterday a dream of happiness, and every tomorrow a vision of hope. So look well, therefore, to this day. And let's repeat that line together. Look well, therefore, to this day.
If you have a chalice at home, I invite you to join me by lighting it while Reverend Larry lights ours. These words are called A True Story by Lee Kinvey. This chalice is for the living, the changing, the becoming. This chalice is for losing the script of your life, the chapters about who you are in other people's stories. This chalice is for the lost GPS that was supposed to show you how to get to where they expected you to go. This chalice is for skipping the directions, coloring outside the lines, painting not by number, but by silence, by wild abandoned, and with a brush you made yourself from a light deep inside, startling, vivid, a new voice that already knows you, finally, a true story. Now, rise as you are willing and able to sing hymn number 80 or 44. We sing of golden mornings. Join me now, please, with our unison affirmation. First Unitarian Church of Wilmington is a beloved community that nourishes minds and spirits, fights injustice, and transforms the world through loving action. You may be seated.
Yeah, just hold those, and I'll get you get the chalice. Today, we are celebrating an important Unitarian Universalist rite of passage known as the Bridging Ceremony. The Bridging Ceremony celebrates the transition of our youth from their adolescence into young adulthood. It is a time of tremendous change and stress for our youth. They are on the cusp of so many changes in their lives. They are ready now to assume the challenges of young adulthood. Today, we honor the transition, the bridge from youth to young adulthood. Will Rosalie Geist and Gabriel Poos please come forward? When parents bring their children before our congregation to be dedicated, we give the children a rose, symbolizing the beauty and newness of their lives. And we remove from the rose all the thorns that might cause pain. Today, we stand before you and the congregation. You stand before the congregation without your parents, and we give you a rose. But this time, we have not removed the thorns. As young adults, we hope you will grasp life with all its joys and beauty, and difficulties and sadness. Yet, we hope that what you have learned here over the years gives you the faith and spiritual tools to carry on in times of trouble, knowing that our love and our encouragement go with you. Thank you. Though adult life is occasionally sharply painful, as well as rich in color and texture, we urge our young adults to engage in it fully. And while we are not able to protect them, we try to give them the tools to protect themselves. Values by which to measure lives of worth, decision-making skills, and the knowledge of how to think instead of what we think, a heritage of the right of conscience, and the need to act on what the conscience demands, and a religious community in which to test and refine the possible directions of their lives. And so we say goodbye to the youth now, with confidence, as well as some lingering wistfulness, and eagerly await the opportunity of greeting today's Bridger as a young adult. Today, you cross the bridge. We celebrate you for all you have been, for all you are now, and for all you will be. We give you our blessing as you leave this community of children and youth. As you cross the bridge into young adulthood, we give you a chalice to light your way. Can you hold it? Or do you want me? And you guys now.
Today marks an ending so that I may begin again to hope and do and learn and be. Today I cross this bridge and join in fellowship. Let me grow, but don't let me go.
So Gabe and Rose, you could stay here for a second. We bless you today. May your mind be on fire with wonder and wisdom. May your heart be aflame with love for this life. And may your hands be ignited with purpose. And may your spirit be aglow with courage and compassion. Gabe and Rose, you are a light unto the world. And you carry our steadfast love with you wherever you may go. Now the congregation, please rise and bless the Bridgers with the words that you'll see on the screen. We bless you. We love you. May your life unfold with joy. Amen. And blessed be.
Let me announce the song. And now we will sing our children out Children, please wait at the back door for me. Don't go running ahead. Thank you.
Okay, congratulations.
For you shall go out in joy. For you shall go out in joy and come back in peace. And come back in peace. Blessed be. For you shall go out in joy. For you shall go out in joy and come back in peace. And come back in peace.
Let us join together now in a time of prayerful meditation, sensing whatever it is that we are holding in our individual hearts on this day, and also sensing the concerns that we have for our world and for those that we love. So may we pause right now and attend to what it is that we hold in our individual and collective hearts. May we feel a presence of love and compassion that works in us and through us to bless this world, to bring justice about, and to share love that can be healing and liberating. For all that is our life, we give our thanks and praise. For all life is a gift which we are called to use to build the common good and make our own days glad. For sorrow we must bear, for failures, pain, and loss, for each new thing we learn, for fearful hours that pass, we come and give thanks and praise for all that is our life. Let's join now in a time of shared silence during the musical meditation. A story is told of a man who was astonished to find his name in the obituary column in the morning paper. Perhaps that man, the philosopher Kierkegaard proposed, did not know that he had died because he did not know that he had lived either. James Hollis, the Jungian analyst, explains that many of his clients in their 70s or older have dreams in which they are surveying their lives. It's as if their life is going before their eyes. And like a rerun of a movie, they want to figure out what their life is about. Hollis concludes that they are still reviewing the scenes of their life for the unfinished business, perhaps seeking self-forgiveness, or perhaps figuring out what they want their lives to mean. Hollis advised that it might behoove any of us, no matter what our age, so that means everyone here in this room, to awaken while we are still here, so that we recognize that we can still be writing our story on those blank pages that lie before us. His account of the dream life of his 70-year-old plus clients, indicates, I believe, that there is this aspect of ourself that, whether we are conscious of it or not, is actively authoring or reauthoring our lives while we are still living them. Eleanor Marie Sarton, who we know as the poet May Sarton, moved with her family from Belgium to Cambridge, Massachusetts in 1915. In her memoir entitled At 70, she recalls that when she was about 10 years old, a friend introduced her to Unitarianism by inviting her to accompany her to First Parish in Cambridge, the Unitarian Universalist congregation right across from Harvard University. Sarton reports that she was deeply impacted by the message of the minister, Reverend Samuel McCord Crothers, who she recalls gave a sermon that, in her words, made a great impression on me and really marked me for life. I can still hear him saying, she says, "Go into the inner chamber of your soul and shut the door." The slight pause after the word soul did it, she says, a revelation to the child who heard it and who has never forgotten it. So literally or metaphorically, I do believe that going into the inner chamber of our soul and shutting the door is an essential practice of authoring, if not recreating, our lives. We need to take the time to step outside the dance of our life for deeper reflection and to deeper listening to what our lives are saying. We each need to find ways to get off the automatic pilot that we sometimes find ourselves on, and occasionally, or at least every now and then, recognize that we are on automatic pilot. For the poet May Sarton, this going into the inner chamber of her soul had to be recovered again and again and again, and she gives a record of these journeys in her journals and in her poetry. May Sarton's poem, Now I Become Myself, calls us to move out of automatic pilot, out of our assumptive worlds of the past, to wake up to the life that is now, in the life that is ours to live in this moment. You perhaps know this poem that she wrote. She writes, "Now I become myself. It's taken time, many years and places. I have been dissolved and shaken, worn other people's faces, run madly as if time were there, terribly old, crying a warning, hurry. You will be dead before what? Before you reach the morning, or the end of the poem is clear, or love safe in the walled city? Now, to stand still, to be here, to feel my own weight and destiny. And then she concludes the poem in this way. All fuses now falls into place from wish to action, from word to silence. My work, my love, my time, my face gathered into one intense gesture of growing like a plant, as slowly as the ripening fruit, fertile, detached, and always spent, falls, but does not exhaust the root. So all the poem is, can give, grows in me to become the song, made so and rooted by love. Now there is time, and time is young. Oh, in this single hour I live, all of myself, and do not move. I, the pursued, who madly ran, stand still, and stop the sun. I'd highlight two of the verses in that poem. Now, to stand still, to be here, to feel my own weight and destiny. And that other verse, stand still, and stop the sun. They seem so reminiscent to me of those words that echoed in her memory from that sermon that she heard as a 10-year-old. Go into the inner chamber of your soul and shut the door. I believe it is the human religious task to be alive, to be awakened while we are still alive, to find our own face, not just everyone else's face, but our own face, that we can look at the world through and within. I believe that this is the religious task at any stage of life, at any juncture of this life that we are in, even this particular moment now, to live in this resolve that Henry David Thoreau stated so succinctly and directly. I wished to live deliberately, to front only the essential facts of life and see if I could not learn what it has to teach, and not, when I came to die, discover I had not lived. In our Unitarian Universalist congregations, we encourage this deeper reflection upon our own life experiences, our own personal stories as a source of wisdom and truth and meaning. As Unitarian Universalists, we encourage ourselves to listen to one another's stories also as a way to get some deeper truth, wisdom, and insight about life. Each of us, as I look at you, are a scripture, a collection of scriptures, a collection of meanings and insights and wisdom that you have gathered. And how wonderful it is that when we gather together as a congregation, we get to read not only the pages of our own personal scripture, but also peruse the scriptures of one another as we hear one another's stories and attend to the wisdom that wants to reveal itself to us. In a course that has been taught at many Unitarian Universalist congregations over the years, the story of your life writing a spiritual autobiography, which I hope to lead next fall as part of our live stream at First Unitarian programs for our congregation and the broader community, Dan Wakefield offers this guideline in the course. He writes, "You are not here to criticize your fellow students, but to support them, to listen to their story, not for the purpose of telling them how they can improve on it by making it more like you would do it, but to learn how you can better understand your own story by listening to theirs." By listening to theirs. You see, I believe that one of the values of being part of a congregation is that week after week, if we open ourselves to it, we have the opportunity to hear a much broader story than merely our own. And we have opportunities to listen to one another in ways that lead us back into our own lives in some distinctly different ways, if we open ourselves to it. When we truly listen to our own story, I believe that we have that opportunity for engaging with our life, for recreating our life, that comes not just from the rehashing of the events and the circumstances of our life from the past, but through the questions that we ask ourselves now about our own life story. What are some of those questions? I thought you'd never ask. James Hollis recommends in his book, Living the Examined Life, that the question we should engage in is less the question of what happened to me. It is not just the recognition of the events or the circumstances of our life that allow us to be awakened in this life and in this moment. Instead, Hollis offers this insight. The shift of our center of gravity, he writes, begins by asking less, what happened to me, than another question. You ready for it? What wants to enter the world through me? That we might be bearers of new life into this world is the only antidote, he writes, to the old world and its stories. Indeed, it's the questions that we ask of ourselves about our life story that can determine how much we truly inhabit this life that is ours right now, in this moment. It's the questions that we ask that can awaken us in this life, in this moment, so that we can declare with Henry David Thoreau, and not when I came to die, discover I had not lived. If we only focus on what has been, on what has happened in our personal lives, in our societies, or even our congregations, we may be rehashing the same old stories, polishing the same familiar myths, and traveling the same territory again and again. Over time, if we only tell the stories of the past, our stories may become embellished into golden eras that we've enshrined and can merely give us glimpses of what has been and never tell the fuller story of what else was going on, and never reveal to us in the moment what is it that wants to emerge. Over time, if we only tell the stories of the past, we may traffic in the tragic and forget that there was much more, much, much more. A resiliency that also happened even in the midst of pain. In spite of the circumstances that we were allowed to still move forward. To ask the question that Hollis proposes, I believe, allows us to stay current in this moment and not just in the backwater of the past. Again, Hollis's question is, what wants to enter the world through me? say that question softly to yourself, and let's pause in that question together for a moment. What wants to enter the world through me? Maybe you tremble at the threshold of that question. Maybe you find an opening that you never knew was there. Maybe you find a lure that propels you forward. Maybe you find that it's something that wants to emerge, that it presents itself first as image or as feeling or as insight. Try practicing that question over the next few weeks, asking yourself that question, what wants to enter the world through me? Oh, I know you have to rehearse it one more time, so say it after me. What wants to enter the world through me? I'm curious what I'll discover as I reflect on that question. I'm curious what you'll discover. Notice it's a lot different than the question of what happened to me. It brings us to a different place, a different opening, a threshold in which what wants to emerge can perhaps find a way in and through us. My friend, the author Parker Palmer, describes in his book, Let Your Life Speak, one of the moments when he began to wake up in this life. He writes, I was in my early 30s when I began literally to wake up to questions about my vocation. By all appearances, things were going well, but the soul does not put much stock in appearances. He continues, seeking a path more purposeful than accumulating wealth, holding power, winning at competition, or securing a career. I had started to understand that it is indeed possible to live a life other than one's own. Fearful that I was doing just that, but uncertain about the deeper, truer life I sensed hidden inside me, uncertain whether it was real or trustworthy or within reach, I would snap awake in the middle of the night and stare for long hours at the ceiling. And reflecting upon this experience 30 years later, Parker came to the realization that before you tell your life what you intend to do with it, listen for what it intends to do with you. Before you tell your life what truths and values you've decided to live up to, let your life tell you what truth you embody, what values you represent. Listening then to what our story, our life story is telling us right now is another way to engage with our life, to awaken in our life while it's still going on. Does it make sense to you? The famed psychiatrist Viktor Frankl, the author of a book that many of you have probably heard of or read, Man's Search for Meaning. I wonder if it has a different title now. It might be just Search for Meaning. It tells the story of the time he was preparing to lead a seminar on the meaning of life. And a young man approached him and said, Hey, Frankel, don't be angry with me. I've been invited to my future in-laws tonight. I really do have to go, and I can't stay for the lecture, but please, be so kind and tell me quickly, what is the meaning of life? I suspect that man walked away frustrated. No one can really answer the question for us. But what Frankel did have to offer about the meaning of life was not a particular answer, but a story from which his perspectives arose. What Frankel had to say about the search for meaning rose out of his torturous and trying experiences of being imprisoned for 3 years in concentration camps. And at the same time, when this incident, when the young man occurred, Viktor Frankl was about to give some lectures only 11 months, take this in, only 11 months after he had been released from imprisonment in those concentration camps. What a poignant moment that must have been. He didn't have just an opinion to share. He had experiences to share. And when we listen to our own lives as well, I believe we have more than opinions to share. We have experiences to share as well, right? So the question that those who attended those lectures, the question they had was, what could a man had seen and endured such horrors have to say that would be helpful? They understood that his perspectives were inseparable from the story of his life. These lectures were only recently published, actually, by Beacon Press in a book entitled Yes to Life in Spite of Everything. Maybe gives you a gist of what he had to say. I imagine the audiences who heard him speak following the horrors of the Nazi terror and regime that had overtaken his country wondered, does it matter? Does life have meaning? And this is what Frankl replied. And he replied from his own lived experience, from his own story, not an opinion, but from a story. He said, the question can no longer be, what can I expect from life? But the question can now only be, what does life expect of me? What task in life is waiting for me? You already got a head start on that question through your memorization of that earlier question, right? What was that question? Who remembers? What wants to enter the world through me? You've got a head start in responding to that. The writer Toni Morrison said that narrative is one of the ways in which knowledge is organized. Indeed, we often organize our lives individually and collectively through the narratives that we tell. Helen opened by repeating the description I had for the sermon. Tell a good story. Good doesn't always have to be good in the sense of positive. Good also can mean a meaningful story. A story that is drenched with our own understanding of life, our own struggles, our own questions as well. So we don't need to put some kind of patina on the story of our life. We need to enter it deeply and see what wants to emerge that is of good, that is of worth for us and for others who hear our story. Now, we rarely recognize that the narratives that we tell are simply one organization of the events and the circumstances of our lives. The narratives that we tell about our life are not the only narrative that we could tell, although let's recognize it. Often we or others can be so attached to our particular narrative or story that we or they don't realize what we might have left out. What are the facts or the feelings or the insights that remain on the cutting room floor when we tell our story? And what would it be like for us now and then to take up some of those things that we might have cut out of the story and say, what new story can we tell by connecting those things that we somehow have left out of our usual dominant story? In my work, I've often had numerous opportunities to stand along people, congregations, and organizations as they have, as Toni Morrison proposes, organized their knowledge in narrative form. In my writing in this field, I've often drawn upon some of my training in narrative therapy, and particularly that of asking questions that allow some of us to see what we may have left out of our dominant story. And how, if we ask questions such as, is that the only story that's there? What else could be told about these events? And in asking those questions, oftentimes we can recover new meanings. So, modern research says that 40% of Americans have not discovered a satisfied life purpose or have a sense of what would make their lives meaningful. Research has shown that having purpose and meaning in life increases one's overall well-being and life satisfaction. In contrast to the dominant story that we often tell of a single-minded pursuit of happiness, what really brings happiness and fulfillment and well-being is having some understanding of what we want our life to mean and living that. So today we celebrated a particular passage in the life of our high schoolers, Gabe and Rose, in which they leave high school and move on to young adulthood. Are you ready? We recognize in this bridging ceremony that there are many bridging ceremonies in our own lives, whether we call them that or not, where we're moving from one way of being to another way of being. Whether we mark them or not, we each can have this bridge represent for us a moving from one way of understanding life to another way. A bridge can be a reminder to us of a deeper truth about life, that when we engage consciously and intentionally with this life, that we can bring together what has been with what is, with what wants to emerge in our life. Amen. So may it be. Helen.
Wow. Well, I mentioned in my welcome, I'd been thinking a lot about Reverend Larry's sermon topic, you are the story you tell yourself, so tell yourself a good story. But I wonder how that works out with churches. What's the story that we as a church community are telling ourselves? Do we see ourselves as we were in the past? Or are we telling ourselves the story of our present and our future? With a new focus on our justice work, on finding new means to discover spiritual growth, making new ways to care for each other, what are the stories that we're telling ourselves about who we are and who we want to become? As we ponder that, entering the stewardship moment, we ask you to consider what we need to do to keep the work of this church going. For those of you at home, there are 4 ways of giving that will appear on your screen once we move into our offertory music. Here in the congregation, there is a cash box at the back if you have a cash or a check to give. It's time now to dedicate our offering to the work of this congregation, which is weaving a tapestry of love and action. And to these are our offerings. Thank you. Thank you.
I am unwritten, can't read my mind. I'm undefined. I'm just beginning. The pen's in my hand, ending unplanned. Staring at the blank page before you. Open up the dirty window, let the sun illuminate the words that you could not find. Reaching for something in the distance, so close you can almost taste it. Release your inhibitions, feel the rain on your skin. No one else can feel it for you, only you can let it in. No one else can speak the words on your lips. Drench yourself in words unspoken, live your life with arms wide open. Today is where your book begins, the rest is still unwritten. I break tradition. Sometimes my tries are outside the lines. We've been conditioned to not make mistakes, but I can't live that way. Staring at the blank page before you, open up the dirty window, let the sun illuminate the words that you could not find. Reaching for something in the distance, so close you can almost taste it. Release your inhibitions, feel the rain on your skin. No one else can feel it for you, only you can let it in. No one else can speak the words on your lips. Drench yourself in words unspoken, let your life with arms wide open. Today is where your book begins, the rest is still unwritten. Staring at the blank page before you, open up the dirty window, let the light illuminate the words that you could not find. Reaching for something in the distance, so close you can almost taste it. Release your inhibitions. Staring at the blank page before you, open up the Let the sun illuminate the words that you could not find. Reaching for something in the distance, so close you could almost taste it. Release your inhibitions. Staring at the blank page before you, open up the dirty window. Let the sun illuminate the words that you could not find. Reaching for something in the distance, so close you can almost taste it. Release your inhibitions. We are on return.
If you have a chalice at home, I invite you to extinguish it now, as Reverend Larry extinguishes ours here in the sanctuary. Our words are Our Inner Lights by Amanda Alice Houlihan. Together, we have enjoyed the warmth and beauty of stories of this flame and of this special community. As our chalice flame is extinguished this morning, we can still remember that its glow is carried within us. We can use our inner lights and this flame to kindle new sparks throughout our lives and in the world. May the spirit of peace and the togetherness bless your lives.
So following our benediction, we will sing our closing hymn, which is 354, We Laugh, We Cry, and I believe we're just singing verses 1, 2, and 4. Okay. But those will be the ones that appear on the screen. And after that, please greet your neighbor. Please introduce someone who you think is a newcomer, even if they aren't. And please join us for the food and snacks that have been provided by the board prior to our annual meeting, which will happen here in the sanctuary promptly at 11:59 a.m. So our benediction. These are from some verses by John O'Donohue. May I have the courage today to live the life that I would love, to postpone my dream no longer, but do at last what I came here for and waste my heart on fear no more. Let's join together in singing our closing hymn, We Laugh, We Cry. Stand as you're willing and able.